We're going to hear first from Frank Mather of the European Commission, and he's going to look at the European perspective, particularly on the financial aspects of that. So, over to you, Frank.
Thank you, Owen. As Owen says, my name's Frank Mather. I'm from DG Connect in the European Commission. And what I want to do, with no slides, is give you an overview of the European perspective to highlight what we see are the important lessons to be learnt by Scotland, and maybe one or two failures that we've seen elsewhere that you might also learn from. Let me begin, though, by saying what our overall objectives, not ours and the ones in Scotland. From our perspective, we've set out what we call the Digital Agenda for Europe, which is a key element in the overall economic strategy for European Union for the next 10 years, the Europe 2020 initiative. We see, in two thought words, broadband deployment is the key element in growth and jobs. What we're here to do is growth and jobs. What really pleased me in the reading I had on the plane coming over was to read the Scottish Digital Dialogue project. We are reviewing national broadband plans across all of Europe, and the Scottish one strikes me as one of the leading examples, not least because of today's event. What the Scottish one is clearly understands well is the importance of finance. I've seen other national broadband plans that come out with targets to achieve 80%, 100 megabits per second by 2018 that amount to nothing more than that statement. So I think the finance part of it is critical, and let me commend the Scottish Government for this event and for what it's done. Now, what I'd like to do is to look at financing from three perspectives. We sat down and worked out how much it would cost to achieve the European targets. And the figure comes up to around about 250 billion euros for the European Union. Now, divide that down, and UK's got about 10% of the European population, so it's of the order of 25 billion. As we see, part of that, and probably the majority of that, will come from private investment. Some elements will never be reached by private investment, and there must be what you might, let's call, a market failure element, in which case the public sector has to get involved, and then there's a huge middle ground. What seems to me to be critical is that we look at ways to expand the private part and reduce this middle ground. This is the area where a lot of Scotland lies in, and where we wish to achieve things. For the private investment part, the only role we have in the European Union as the regulatory authority is to establish a regulatory framework that encourages investment. That's what we have been doing since the regulatory framework was established in 1998. The very latest thing being the cost reduction regulation that aims to shift the risk-reward ratio in investing in broadband, to lower the risks, to increase the level of reward. So, a clear regulatory framework that encourages investment. At the other end of the scale, the market failure end of the scale, at the European Union level, our main tool is the structural funds. Now, I need to quickly explain something about the European Union and the way it's structured. We are organised in 7-year financial blocks. The one at the moment is about to end in 2013, and we're starting a new one from 2014 to 2020. The negotiations on that affect everything in the financial world that I work in. The structural funds are coming to an end. We are now negotiating the structural funds for the next 7-year period. A key question I would raise, and I don't know the answer here, is that what we in Brussels are doing is negotiation with member state governments, i.e. London, on what's termed the operational programme that will determine the shape and the structure of what can be spent under the structural funds. I don't know to what extent Edinburgh plays a part in these initiatives and these negotiations, but it strikes me that at this stage it's critical that you do. That there is a lot of money involved in these funds. I know that Edinburgh is the managing authority for the Scottish element of it, but that's a critical role in this financing is always going to be important to Scotland. The other issue that's raised by public funding is the state aid question. And I said I wanted to highlight some lessons. It seems to me from broadband policy perspective in Brussels that the UK doesn't understand state aid very well. The UK government sent us an umbrella notification for its rural broadband scheme, which was approved after a lot of negotiations, the main concern being full market access. Was full market access enabled? Remember, state aid rules are all about ensuring that public expenditure does not distort competition. The rural scheme was approved, the urban scheme is running into major problems. And as I understand it, of about a week ago, the Department of Culture, Media and Sport has effectively given up on that and is coming up with an alternative scheme. Now, this is I know that Edinburgh had super-connected city money, Perth, Aberdeen, Glasgow's got it's not super-connected city money, but it got its science and technology funding. If it's public money, it will be state aid regulated. There needs to be, I think, a more considered approach to state aid, because state aid amounts to, when my colleague from the EIB talks next, he will highlight the risk factor. If state aid is a risk, it's going to discourage investment. So that's my one warning for what we've seen. Okay, private investment, market failure, what do we do in the middle ground? Now, 6 weeks ago, this would have been the main part of my presentation. I would have told you the wonders of the European Union and how we plan to invest 9.2 billion in what we call the Connecting Europe facility, and it's going to be all singing, all dancing, it's going to save the world. It was, however, rejected. So we have we have small amount of money left. We have 1 billion, most of which will be spent on service infrastructure, and at the most, the final decision's not made. The final decision is in the hands of the European Parliament. But the truth is the European Parliament might make little changes at the edges. They're not going to make a major change to this. We've lost the Connecting Europe facility as far as broadband is concerned. Despite that, if we have 150 million, if we can use the money in the structural funds towards this investment, what I would push forward strongly is the use of financial instruments. We have a lot of experience with use of financial instruments in other formats. We have a facility known as RSFF, the risk-sharing financial facility, which supports corporate lending in RDI. That has a leverage effect of more than 10, so that every €1 million of public expenditure generates 10 million overall investment when the private sector investment that goes with it. Plus the public sector gets its £1 million back at the end of the day. Now, it's a win-win situation for everybody. It's a facility that we hope, despite the loss of the Connecting Europe facility, to be able to use. And Mikhail will, in a second, speak about the EIB, which invests more than 2 billion a year on broadband investment. My conclusion is that there are a lot of options out there. I commend the Scottish Government, as I say, for starting this event, and I commend it also for looking at this from a Scottish perspective. In contrast to what's happening in England, where they seem to have devolved this down to a local authority level. A local authority level will not produce the size of projects that will interest the EIB. It will not, at a local authority level, be able to produce events like this. So I think there is a lot of potential in what Scotland is doing. There's a lot out there that can bring finance to the Scottish project, and I think my 15 minutes are up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.